So much going on. I never done heroin when I was in the Pistols. And it was just, I was just having...
Steve Jones, the guitar wizard behind the Sex Pistols' razor-sharp sound, the working-class hero who turned power chords into weapons of mass destruction.
And we don't care!
While Johnny Rotten got the headlines with his sneering provocations, Jones was the musical muscle that gave punk its crushing sonic punch.
I mean, it seems pretty silly, actually, doing this, but I like it. Go on. Ask me another.
But beneath that laid-back exterior and cheeky grin lurked some surprisingly bitter resentments. You see, Jones wasn't just the Sex Pistols' secret weapon. He was also their harshest critic of musical mediocrity. From prog rock virtuosos who made him feel inadequate to new wave bands who stole punk's thunder, from classic rock legends who blocked his heroes to modern acts that completely missed punk's point. Today we're uncovering the 6 bands that drove Steve Jones absolutely mental, and the final entry will blow your mind. It involves a musical betrayal so personal that it poisoned Jones's view of collaboration forever. This isn't just about guitar snobbery. We're talking about class warfare, musical insecurity, and the bitter taste of being replaced. Get ready for some seriously unexpected grudges from punk's most underrated architect. 6th, Rush. Opening our countdown. Rush, the Canadian prog rock virtuosos whose technical mastery made Jones question his own abilities as a guitarist. Jones's resentment toward Rush stemmed from his deep insecurity about musical education and technical skill. While he could deliver crushing power chords with devastating effect, watching Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson navigate complex time signatures and intricate arrangements made him feel like a musical peasant. He once confided to friends that Rush represented everything I'll never be able to do.
Era, still. I don't think he's let that go and moved on.
And you guys aren't going to play again anytime, right?
Not for the money we get paid.
Yeah.
A rare moment of vulnerability from punk's most confident-seeming guitarist. The animosity deepened when music magazines constantly praised Rush's instrumental prowess, while dismissing punk as three-chord simplicity. Jones took these comparisons personally, viewing them as attacks on his working-class approach to music making. He particularly resented critics who suggested that real musicians needed formal training and theoretical knowledge to create meaningful art. What really stung was Rush's commercial success despite their complexity. Jones couldn't understand how audiences embraced music that required a mathematics degree to follow, telling bandmates that Rush proved people would rather feel stupid than feel anything real. Their elaborate concept albums and sci-fi themes seemed like pretentious escape from the harsh realities that punk confronted directly. The breaking point came when someone suggested Jones could improve his playing by studying Rush's techniques. His response was explosively defensive. He argued that punk's power came from emotional honesty, not technical showboating, and that Rush's precision was sterile masturbation for people afraid of getting their hands dirty. Jones's hatred for Rush revealed his deepest fear, that his intuitive, untrained approach to guitar might be seen as inferior to formally educated musicianship. At number 5, Queen, whose theatrical bombast and operatic pretensions represented everything Jones found ridiculous about British rock excess. Jones's disgust with Queen began with their elaborate stage productions and Freddie Mercury's over-the-top performances. Coming from the streets of London, he viewed their theatrical approach as artificial posturing by middle-class musicians playing dress-up for audiences who preferred fantasy to reality. He once described Queen concerts as circus acts for people who think loud equals important.
You know, I was serious as well.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's always been a guitar hero, wasn't there?
Yeah.
The conflict escalated when Queen achieved massive stadium success, while the Sex Pistols struggled with industry blacklisting. Jones resented their ability to fill arenas with what he considered pompous nonsense, telling friends that Queen proved audiences prefer fake drama to genuine rebellion. Their mainstream acceptance particularly galled him, as he saw it as reward for avoiding any real social or political challenge. What pushed Jones over the edge was Queen's musical eclecticism and Brian May's guitar orchestrations. He viewed their genre hopping as lack of authentic identity, describing their approach as musical tourism by people who can't commit to being anything real. May's layered guitar work especially irritated him, as he saw it as showing off, rather than serving the song's emotional needs. The nuclear moment occurred when Mercury made comments about rock music's entertainment value and the importance of giving audiences spectacle. Jones's reaction was typically blunt. He suggested that Queen represented rock and roll's transformation into musical theater, arguing that their success proved the medium was losing its dangerous edge. Jones's condemnation of Queen reflected his belief that rock should be raw, direct and honest rather than elaborate, theatrical, and escapist. About fourth Genesis, Phil Collins era. Securing fourth place, Genesis during their Phil Collins transformation, whose pop accessibility and emotional sincerity made Jones physically nauseous.
Buried in a sheltered place in this town.
Jones's revulsion toward Collins-era Genesis went beyond musical disagreement. He saw their evolution as the ultimate betrayal of rock's rebellious spirit. Their transition from complex prog rock to radio-friendly pop represented everything he despised about the music industry's commercial pressures, once describing Collins as a singing insurance salesman who convinced people that boring was beautiful. The disgust intensified when Genesis dominated MTV and mainstream radio during the 80s. Jones couldn't stomach their wholesome image and Collins' earnest emotional appeals, telling journalists that Genesis had neutered rock music for people too timid to handle real feelings. Their success, while punk struggled for airplay, felt like personal insult to everything he'd fought to achieve. What really triggered Jones's fury was Collins's solo career and his reputation as a sensitive performer. He viewed Collins's ballads and heartfelt lyrics as manipulative pandering to audiences who wanted to feel moved without being challenged, describing his approach as emotional fast food for people too lazy to earn their feelings. The explosive moment came when Collins made statements about music's power to heal and bring people together. Jones's response was characteristically savage. He argued that Collins represented the death of rock's dangerous honesty, suggesting that his feel-good messages were lies told by millionaires to people who've given up on real change. Jones's hatred for Genesis reflected his broader contempt for rock's mainstream domestication and his belief that music should disturb rather than comfort. 3. Duran Duran claiming the bronze medal. Duran Duran, whose fashion-obsessed new wave glamour and video dominance drove Jones to new levels of working-class rage. Jones's loathing for Duran Duran was deeply rooted in class resentment and aesthetic revulsion. He saw their perfectly styled appearance and expensive video productions as everything wrong with music's commercialization, once describing them as male models pretending to be musicians for people who think shopping is a personality.
For someone who didn't know anything about the Sex Pistols, I guess it was a good, way of describing.
The hostility exploded when Duran Duran conquered MTV with their glossy videos and became global superstars. Jones viewed their success as proof that image had completely replaced substance in popular music, telling friends that they represented fashion advertising disguised as rock and roll. Their ability to sell millions of records based primarily on their appearance particularly infuriated him. What really pushed Jones into fury was Duran Duran's influence on younger musicians who began prioritizing style over musical ability. He saw them as responsible for corrupting rock's values, describing their impact as teaching kids that looking good matters more than playing well. Their emphasis on visual presentation seemed like direct attack on his own scruffy, unpretentious aesthetic. The thermonuclear moment occurred when Simon Le Bon made comments about the importance of image in modern music. Jones's counterattack was merciless. He suggested that Duran Duran represented the complete victory of marketing over music, arguing that their success proved audiences no longer cared about authentic artistic expression. Jones's contempt for Duran Duran embodied his fear that punk's raw honesty was being overwhelmed by superficial glamour and commercial calculation. 2. The Clash. Earning the runner-up position, The Clash, whose political messaging and musical experimentation represented punk's ultimate sellout in Jones's unforgiving judgment.
Darling, you got to let me know.
This betrayal cut particularly deep because The Clash were supposed to be punk brothers in arms, part of the same movement that rejected mainstream rock conventions. But Jones quickly grew to despise what he saw as their calculated rebellion and middle-class politics, describing them as university students playing working-class dress-up for other university students. The conflict erupted when The Clash began incorporating reggae, ska, and world music into their sound. Jones viewed their musical expansion as pretentious abandonment of punk's raw simplicity, telling reporters that Joe Strummer was trying to turn three-chord rebellion into a world music seminar. Their experimentation felt like rejection of everything that made punk powerful and immediate. What really drove Jones mental was The Clash's commercial success and critical acclaim, particularly in America where they were hailed as the only band that matters. He resented their ability to package revolution for mass consumption while maintaining street credibility, once describing their success as proof that Americans prefer their rebellion prepackaged and politically correct. The final explosion came when The Clash made statements about punk's responsibility to address social issues and promote political awareness. Jones's response was devastating. He argued that their messaging was middle-class guilt disguised as working-class anger, and that their revolutionary posturing was performance art for people who'll never risk anything real. Jones's verdict on The Clash was both musical and moral. He saw them as traitors who had abandoned punk's nihilistic honesty for marketable political theater. Number 1, The Faces without Ronnie Wood. The most shocking revelation, Steve Jones' deepest hatred was reserved for The Faces after Ronnie Wood's departure to join the Rolling Stones, representing the ultimate abandonment by his musical hero. This betrayal was particularly devastating because Wood had been Jones's primary guitar influence and the closest thing he had to a musical father figure. When Wood left The Faces to join the Stones in 1975, just as Jones was forming the Sex Pistols, it felt like personal abandonment at the moment he most needed inspiration and validation. Jones's fury wasn't just about lineup changes. He saw Wood's departure as proof that even his heroes would sell out for bigger fame and more money. The remaining Faces' attempts to continue without Wood seemed pathetic to Jones, who viewed them as a tribute band playing their own songs badly, and proof that authentic rock partnerships were impossible to maintain. What made this hatred so toxic was its personal dimension. Jones had modeled his entire guitar approach on Wood's style, spending countless hours learning Faces songs and absorbing their working-class rock aesthetic. Wood's departure to join rock royalty felt like betrayal of everything the Faces had represented about authentic, unpretentious rock and roll. The psychological impact was profound. Jones's experience watching his musical heroes break up for commercial reasons colored his approach to every subsequent band relationship, making him deeply cynical about loyalty and commitment in rock music. His bitterness toward the post-Wood Faces represented his fear that all musical partnerships were temporary and ultimately motivated by selfish ambition. The wound never healed. Even decades later, Jones would speak dismissively about the Faces' later work, unable to separate his personal disappointment from his musical judgment, making Wood's departure one of the formative betrayals that shaped his entire approach to rock and roll relationships. Steve Jones's guitar genius came with some seriously unexpected grudges and deep-seated resentments about rock's commercial evolution. From prog rock intimidation to new wave superficiality, Jones fought musical battles that revealed his working-class insecurities and fierce loyalty to punk's original spirit. Which of his targets caught you most off guard? Share your thoughts and subscribe for more stories about punk's unsung antagonists.